the people who haven't experienced failure, who are still really scared of it, that is such a limiting thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because after you've failed, after you've hit that low, you know all the resources it takes to come back. And you know sort of that inner strength that is very positive that you didn't know about yourself before. Right? So now I have that. Right? That's why I don't actually fear failure in general.
Welcome to the 8th episode of In Full Effect. Thank you, Van, for coming on. It's not been long in the making, like some others have been doing, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited. Lucky 8, like you just mentioned.
Lucky 8.
I'm gonna get straight into it. For the viewers, first of all, thank you so much for all the support so far. It's been amazing and it's only ramping up, so it's very exciting for me to keep going. Van, I met her actually at one of the jobs, just like this, pointing a camera at her face, interviewing her, making her uncomfortable in front of the camera. So I thought, why not do it again? But
good,
for fun.
I look forward to it. Let's go.
That's great. So Van is a consultant here, and it's quite intricate. So I'll leave that up to her to explain. She is originally from Chicago, US born.
US born in the US.
Okay. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on is just you're so bubbly and an extrovert, so I was very excited to always talk to you. I want to get more into the consulting space and wrap my head around it. You explain a little bit more about what the company is about, because it's not so straightforward consulting. I'm very interested in the whole consulting space, so tell us a little bit more about all of that.
Sure. So I started 2 years ago with my business partner, Mimi Wu. We started a consulting company to help companies, nonprofits, philanthropists in Vietnam advance either social good or environmental impact projects. An example is that a company maybe has some projects already working with communities, but now they need to look at their environmental impact. They need to look at the way they work with their staff, their government regulators, these kinds of things, and they need someone to sort of plot it out and plan. So we do those kinds of things.
Okay, cool. And are there many like you around consulting?
Nope. Also, at this moment, what Mimi and I are sort of unique about is that we worked in nonprofit first. So we worked for over 10, 12 years working for nonprofits across a lot of different topics. So education, healthcare, water and sanitation, anti-trafficking work, and anything else? Community partnerships. What we were really good at was building partnerships between corporates and nonprofits and working together. And so what we've done is we've taken that skill set and now put it towards consulting businesses directly, or consulting governments, or consulting nonprofits and philanthropists.
Okay, cool. Very interesting. So on a more personal level, or it could also be your professional level, what are your goals and aspirations in this?
Goals and aspirations. So overall, what I will say is that my goal in life is to help people. And that may sound very simple or easy or cliche, but in my life, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as a career, I always ended up leaning towards causes that I care about, whether it was speaking out against sweatshops, or it was working towards collecting, clothes or money for poor families, those kinds of things. I always ended up falling into those kinds of projects. And so my goal is always to have a positive impact in the world, to be doing something and working with people who are united in making positive change. And because of my family background, that has turned into focusing on the sustainable development of Vietnam and all the different ways that businesses and governments and nonprofits and people can contribute.
Yeah. And has that always been the goal, or how did that shape itself?
Nope. That has not always been the goal. So when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I like telling people what to do. And I thought I liked telling people what was right and what was wrong.
Okay.
But then as I grew older, that is not what I ended up doing. I always ended up kind of falling back into nonprofit work.
Okay.
I always thought that I wanted international life. So for me, Chicago was a little too small.
Okay.
It was a struggle for me to have to explain to people where Vietnam was. And I wanted to get out of a community that did not remember or know where Vietnam was and work with people in a very international setting. Right? So in my life, I've lived in different places. I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Wisconsin, I've lived in the United States, and then DC. But I thrived in places that were international. I thrived in DC. And when I came to Saigon the first time and I saw the sort of similar setting, I really felt like Vietnam was the place I wanted to be in next. Right? So I knew as a main goal that I wanted to have an international life, and another goal I wanted to help people and find what that meant, how I could best do that. Right?
Yeah.
And so that goal still remains, and now the goal is staying in Vietnam and contributing and helping people here.
Okay, that's the long-term goal.
Long-term goal.
And is there what would be the ultimate goal out of that? Just do that constantly, or is there a greater goal as well?
No, I think it's probably a bigger goal. One thing that as a student, I studied in Beijing for 3 months. And it was 1998, and people were literally going from bicycles to cars, right? Taxis were everywhere, but Beijing was still under development. Everything was under construction. And I remember leaving as a student going, I don't want to miss this moment where China is making this huge transition. Right? And at the time, China's transition was also not a clean one. Everything was really heavily polluted. Factories were making lots of terrible things, chemicals and stuff. And that was affecting the health of people. Right? When I came to Vietnam later in life, a few years later, just as a first visit, I felt that same feeling like Vietnam is starting to develop. And I really wanted for Vietnam that development to come in a different way, to come in a cleaner way, to come in a healthy way, to come in a more inclusive way so that people were not left behind. Right? Rural people, 80% of this country is countryside people. Right? And so that became part of the goal. But now as I grow my business, as I live here longer, I also love doing work that is regional, right? That is focused on Asia, that is also focused on bringing Americans or Europeans into that story of developing Vietnam. So Vietnam's still at the center, but I like doing more kinds of things.
Okay, cool. And how in all of that, what is your full potential?
I think what I sort of talked to you about before, right? Was
when we were not recording.
We were not recording. was my individual full potential, right? Is that I really work best in a team. I really work best in a group of people who are working together towards a common purpose. And so right now I'm not at my full potential because I've shifted out of working in the nonprofit space into a small consulting firm that now I am building, right? So while I know what I want and where I want to go, the actual startup that I've built with Mimi is still not at the full potential. I don't have a team yet. I don't have all the partnerships I want. We're not working at our full potential, but I can see it. It would be, the full potential now would be having a consulting practice with a good number of team members who have a full slate of clients who all want to improve the way that they work in their communities and their impacts in Vietnam and how they contribute to Vietnam. It would be this office of like 10, 15 people, and we would all be working together on these amazing projects. Right? That is coming, but not here yet.
Okay. So that's a professional full potential. Do you think you'll have a personal one?
Yeah. So one thing that I learned from working in nonprofits is that at the time when I worked at a nonprofit, I was not taking care of myself. Other jobs too. I was so focused on work that I didn't have a good balance with work-life balance. And so full potential individually for myself too is hitting a better balance with that. So having healthier practices, making sure I exercise, making sure I eat well instead of sitting at a desk too long, focused on a laptop like this too long. That is, having that full potential also means having team members that support the projects, and then we work at the right pace and then balance everything else out at home too.
So personally, how do you do that day by day? How do you get there? How do you find that balance? Because balance is actually a very interesting topic, as I was talking to Adam, the previous speaker, to find balance. But there's not just one balance in life. There's balance for so many things. How do you find that balance? What do you do to reach that full potential, like actively?
So again, 2 years in startup, not balanced yet. But what I will say is that I've learned in my life that I need to build that into the goals. So actually, one of the goals we set when we opened up Raise Partners was that we did not want to burn out. That we were going to work, the two partners, Mimi and I, we were going to work with each other to make sure that we had built in a practice of self-care, that we were going to also do all the things that we want to do on the personal side. We love traveling separately. And I wanted to be able to have enough time to see the world, to do the things I want, to have to build a family with my partner, do all these things, right? And so that needs to actually be part of my business strategy.
Okay.
I need to build that balance so that there's enough team members pulling up their weight, that they have those things that they need, that I'm taking care of them, but then we're also taking care of each other.
And how do you find that balance then?
I need to work on it.
We all do. I know it's a very...
Yeah, it's even about from a day-to-day basis, blocking out the time.
Yeah.
So sometimes what's funny is, for example, so Mimi and I are texting back and forth all day, right, on our WhatsApp or whatever it is. And if she sees that I haven't gotten out of my chair, she will say to me on text message, like, go take a walk, go eat lunch. It looks like you haven't eaten lunch. Stop working. Don't send me text messages after 5, right? Okay. Because she's also aware that this is a weakness of mine, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also doing that for her.
Okay.
Helping with the balance. It is so much easier now. This is the second time I've tried consulting, and one of the reasons I failed the first time was I did it by myself. I went freelance, and I tried to build this practice by myself, and there was no one to counter some of the
accountability. Yeah.
And having a partner who also aligns with me on so many things, the values and the mission of what we want to do, but also understands our capacity, helps us sort of do these things together in a more sustainable way.
I think that's very important. I noticed that as well for us. It has so many benefits, and of course it needs to be with someone that you trust, that you can work with, and you can't see it as a competition.
Yeah,
it can be a healthy competition, but if you start looking like that, you won't find the balance, because then you're gonna push yourself, and then you're gonna, like you said, burn out. But the partner is very important to build on top of each other rather than work against each other or something. Yeah, that's very interesting. What is your take on success, especially like within that full potential? How do you see yourself successful, or how do you define someone successful?
You see, so for my personal success, one thing I'm trying to build into this idea of what my personal success is number one, I always want to be thought of as somebody that is effective or impactful, right? I don't want to be thought of as somebody who doesn't achieve, doesn't perform. And so success to me happens to be about social change. But one thing I need to also include in that successful part is I need to, because before in my life I wasn't motivated by profit, I was motivated only by the change part. I also need to make sure I take care of myself. Meaning, I've earned enough money so that I can be a comfortable old person. I need to save now. So success also means like making sure that all my pots are taken care of, right? That I put aside a pot for savings for the future, I put aside enough money for me to spend now and enjoy myself and enjoy my life. And then I'm also doing work that I'm proud of. Right? So for me, those are the...
Again, balance.
Yeah, the balance.
Nice.
But that work part is a major.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's reset. What is stopping you right now to meet those ultimate goals of yours? How, like, you do daily things to get there, but what are your biggest struggles right now to actually find a balance to reach those goals and that full potential of yours?
So right now, what is holding me back is what I will say is that I started this business during COVID. Of course, I didn't know COVID was going to happen, but so one of the things, if I look at what I thought we were going to do with this business 2 years ago, it's very different than now. In some ways, what COVID allowed us to do was slow down and figure out really what we're good at and what we can do. But because of COVID, I didn't hire a team yet. I haven't built up the business as much as I wanted to. And so that is what's holding me back from that sort of thriving full potential, this sort of idea of how we would work best, how we would have bigger impact, work with bigger people, clients, and do bigger things, right? That part is still there. Because I'm still scared that, with the shutdowns and close downs, and I will be responsible for all these team members and have to have enough to
totally get that. We're in the same, It's very challenging.
But I need to actually, now that COVID is slowly going behind us, hopefully, I need to get over that fear part and go back to the drive, go back to the idea of what I want to see, where I want to see this business go to. Hire people, and then work on the next phase, right?
Yeah.
Build them.
Yeah. It's an intricate moment of finding when can you make that change?
Yeah.
Is again, are you going to overwork yourself and then realize, okay, it's finally time to, or are you going to step into it and then hope that it's going to happen? Because at some point you're working too hard that you can't business develop anymore.
So also in terms of growing the company and growing the services that I want to be able to provide, I need to bring expertise in. I need to also build up my own expertise in those places. And actually that is fun and exciting, right? In the beginning that was intimidating, and can I do it? Maybe I'm not good enough to do this, blah, blah, blah. But I can see it now. Also because I can see the need and I can see what people want from us. I can see the possibility. And so sort of leaving behind that COVID anxiety. Yeah. That's what we need.
It's also a very niche thing you're doing, right? So finding expertise within that industry is not easy, I reckon.
Yeah.
Because you might find someone that has some expertise, but is that going to work within the environment that you're going for?
And is it going to work with how far the clients want to go now? Yeah.
That's very challenging.
Wow. Yeah, but it's fun too.
It's fun, figuring out things.
And actually, the more I talk about it with people, the more I do these events, like the one that we did together, the sustainability event, the more I am finding those conversations with people that are leading to the next step.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's exciting too. I found sort of mentors in this community, mentors in the business community, people who will help advance where we want to go.
I think what I'm learning and what you'll be learning throughout running your own business is that you're not always, when you meet someone, pitching to that person directly. And that's what I think networking is. It's not that first person or even the second person that they know or that third person. Connections might come from way further than that. If I talk to you, I don't expect to build a business relationship, or I don't expect something to come out of that conversation. But I know that you know that person, that person, and they know, and that's what's so exciting for me in networking and business development.
I think we talked about this before too. So we were joking, right, that Vietnam is a country of hustlers.
Yeah. And it's not I keep telling people.
For sure. And I think what that also means is that we are a country of relationships. And that is so different than maybe where you're from and also where I'm from.
Yeah.
In DC, of course, it's different, but in Chicago, it's very insular, right? when I came to Vietnam, one of the reasons I actually thrived is because I am an extrovert and I do love networking, but it's because I like to see where all of these relationships go. I don't expect that all of them will lead to money or lead to jobs or lead to whatever, but it's that map, right? And when we started the business, Mimi and I both have really big networks from our nonprofit days, and we were worried that our business clients would never come out from outside of that network.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, all the people who've referred us to clients in the last year have been new. And that's sort of how this continues, right?
Yeah.
This works. And I continue to love networking in Vietnam. It's super easy.
And that's back to that hustle mentality. It's not necessarily like, okay, we like head down, work. It comes with the culture of being so social. Vietnamese are super, super social.
Super social. And in a way, super open to opportunities, right? Super entrepreneur and super helpful.
I started my freelance career in Australia. And I tried in New Zealand as well, but I had zero experience. So literally that was too much to ask from people to hire me with zero experience. So I started in Australia and I built up after a year and I was like, okay, I've done this. It's too convenient, not convenient because Vietnam is actually convenient, but it's too safe in a way.
Too safe. Yes, I agree.
There's no risk.
When I started in Vietnam in my first job, they gave me more responsibilities than probably I earned, right? But number one, that was because I was working at a nonprofit where there just weren't enough hands. So then I was given a lot of chances to try out my skills and to learn. And also I had this wonderful group of colleagues who helped me learn things very quickly. And they celebrated all of the achievements as we went through. And I think had I not worked here first, had I worked somewhere else, I don't know, another country, it would have been a very different experience. And then I was able to rise to management level very quickly because they kept giving me chances. And luckily I succeeded in everything that I did, right? And I'm very grateful for that. And I don't think that would happen in anywhere else besides Vietnam. And one of the reasons I stay, one of the reasons I'm so confident that Vietnam can develop sustainably is because we have that sort of openness. Right? Once we see the reason and the investment needed to do something and the possibility, we will do it. Of course, there are still a lot of problems. There's a lot of barriers, a lot of difficulties. But the thing about Vietnam is it's a small country. When it's ready to change it changes.
It's so open to new things, and that's what I remember now. The things in Western countries, it goes too slow for me. So I'm a person with FOMO. Like I really don't want to miss out. And like especially when I was doing my cruise trip, it was a ferry actually. So I was stuck on a ship for that long. The first 2 months was, or let's say the first month was amazing because it was totally new for me. I was learning like photography skills, people skills. I was meeting so many new people. And it was the height of the summer. There was like 2,000 tourists coming on board every day, things like that. So it was super exciting. But then it already became, after a month, like the same thing.
Your learning curve, right?
Yeah.
The plateau.
Exactly. Not even plateau. It was all like I lost motivation almost. Then they offered me an 8-month contract as a videographer that went all around Europe and to Canada. And as a travel addict, I was like, oh, that's amazing. But I declined it because I was like, that's going to hold me back. I was like, no, thank you. I feel like I have way more potential that I can reach in those 8 months than being stuck on that ship. And so I left. Then I moved to Australia. And that's where everything started.
So for you, then success is also related to your ability to create, no? To do new things.
Create, but improve, to grow. Growth is very important for me. I lose interest very quickly. And you can ask my fiance, she'll know.
So you're FOMO and millennial.
I don't know, like it's just I need to move forward.
Yes.
Because the only way to grow and to improve is forward. And yes, people say, okay, you need to get experience and you need to get really good at this, and you need to do this over and over and over. but I learn quicker by
Yeah.
this level, and then okay, I've done it. I'm maybe not perfect at it, but just throw me at the next one. Throw me at the next one. And you mentioned something about scared. You're scared of failure. Actually, like, and this.
I'm not scared of failure. Remember? But yes, you're right. I did say it in terms of at this moment for this business. All of a sudden, I have a fear of failure. Whereas before in my life, wasn't scared.
No, okay. So it's actually, it comes back to finding the balance.
Yeah.
Like finding the imbalance. So you need to almost like fall off the scale.
Yeah.
So you need to burn your fingers. You need to.
So you know what your resilience is and what your capacity to come back up is.
Like how far can I push it and meaning when do I fail in something? Okay, reel it back. Then I'll find the other end and then I'll go somewhere in between.
To understand the limits too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I love failure. Like, okay, my first few episodes are probably not great, still not great. There's so many more improvement to make.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna be able to do it if you're not doing it.
Yes.
And then you do the next thing to make it better.
This is actually what I also learned about failure. So what I notice is now in my middle age, so I'm older than you, but the people who haven't experienced failure, who are still really scared of it, that is such a limiting thing, right? Because after you've failed, after you've hit the low, you know all the resources it takes to come back, and you know sort of that inner strength that is very positive that you didn't know about yourself before. Right? So now I have that, and that's why I don't actually fear failure in general.
Yeah.
What I fear is disappointing others or hurting other people.
That's like it has to be on you. Like if you risk somebody else's things with that, it's a different thing. Fail fighters, you know fail fighters here?
I did fail fighters.
Okay, yeah, I've been to here in Hello Saigon, Hello World Saigon.
Hello World Saigon.
I've been to one of their ones as well, and that opened my mind as well. That it actually becomes more of a accepted thing of especially business owners and people who are looking to grow. It's accepted to fail.
Yeah, there are lessons in failure, right?
Yeah, lessons in failure. It's not. I think a long time ago or a while ago, people break you down on failure, like, oh, you're not good enough, da 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 da. And you know Gary Vee?
No.
He's all about things. Just head down and hustle, fail as much as you can, and no ego, humbleness.
Yeah.
All these things, and it comes down to that. Like just do it. If you overthink things, it's not gonna happen. Perfect is the bad of good, the enemy of good.
One time I was, as a manager in my NGO, I was failing at managing staff. So I was being a bit, I guess I wouldn't use the word abusive, but I wasn't being very nice. So meaning I wasn't communicating what I wanted well. That would lead to frustration and on my part and me losing my temper. And for my staff, that was very hard for them to know how to work with me and to know how to work together to do things. And so at one point, I was given a coach to help me through that, right? And one of the things that she taught me, because to me, actually, that is, if I think about it now, I wouldn't have said this maybe 10 minutes ago. That was one of my failures, was to realize that as a team leader, I was failing my team. Right? And I didn't see how I thought it.
But did you realize you were failing at it at the time?
No.
Or did somebody point it out?
Someone had to. It took months of them coaching me for me to really understand that what I thought was leadership was not good leadership. That I have strengths in leadership, but but I also have some weaknesses, right? And how to communicate what kind of leader I wanted to be and what kind of team I wanted to put together. And the most important part of that actually came from my staff. So they told the coach what I was doing wrong, basically. Right? And to hear that from a third party was a little bit easier. but repairing that and also formulating for myself what leadership means. You kind of spoke to it just now. I do like that idea of servant leadership, right? That actually as a leader, I need to be serving the people that I'm working with. I thought it was about being sort of a dictator, telling people what to do, doing it on time, and then working through the thing. But no, that's not.
It's also empowering other people because that's how they reach. Because instead of you battling, it brings them down more. They're like their capacity, let's say, is filled up with
Right.
the struggle. And so you need to empower and give them room to improve and fail as well at that time. I'm still learning a lot myself.
I intend to keep learning about that.
Yeah. So we're talking about struggles, and like, what are other struggles in your life that shaped who you are right now?
So the biggest failure in my life was getting divorced. So I have always always knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't always know what I wanted to do in life, but I knew that I had a certain path I saw. So I would go to university. I would graduate university. I would get some work experience. I would go to graduate school, and then I would have a career. And in between all of those things, I would get married, have kids, and have everything, right? Have both the family side and the work side, and be ambitious on both things. And so when I got married, I think I had this very naive thought that that box was ticked, and then I didn't have to invest in it anymore. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to work on it. And so when I got divorced, suddenly I understood very quickly that now I didn't know what that meant, because my identity was that path, that very straight line, and now one of the pieces had fallen off. And so what I learned from that also is I've also always been independent. I always do things my way. And at that moment when I was going through a very emotional time and sad and personal time, I needed to learn that I had to ask for help, because I was not going to get out of that by myself.
That's very important.
Right? And so one of the things I learned was that friends and family, this is actually, those hard, difficult moments are when you need them the most, and they also appear at their best, right? And learning to use those resources, and learning also to talk about things out loud, was a very important lesson. And then also redefining what my identity was, because I thought I'm this, and this, and I'm on my way to this. And all of a sudden one piece falls off. And did that shatter? Does that mean that my entire identity is meaningless? And so also figuring out what life was going to be like after divorce, what work was going to be like, where I was going to go. Should I go back to the US? Should I stay in Vietnam? It basically put brakes on everything. But it ended up that I went in a kind of full circle when I thought about who I am, what I like, who I like, what kinds of work I still want to do I still want to stay in Vietnam, what is the meaning of life, right? It was like a circular moment, and I came back and decided that everything that I was doing in Vietnam was still right on, still exactly what I wanted to do. The kinds of people I am friends with, the kinds of people who are important to me, my family, that became a very strong understanding and identity point too. And then I could go forward and decide what the rest of my life would be. And that I didn't have to be so rigid in thinking out what the next phase is.
Instead of having expectations, a little bit be more open and perceptive.
Yeah, and when things don't go the way I thought it was, it doesn't mean everything's stopped.
Exactly, yeah. And so besides the actual obstacles in your life, who are the people that help you shape? Family, friends, mentors, coaches?
So I've been very lucky in my life. So one, my parents, they came from, my mother and my father come from different kinds of families in Vietnam. So my mother is from Mekong Delta. My father is actually Chinese, who came in through the north, and then down to, grew up in Dalat, and then was in Saigon before he left. So the experiences my father had was that he was a single, he grew up with a single mom during wartime. And so he had to drop out of school at different times. And so that ability for him to actually go back to school and take his brother and have him educated. And when they left Vietnam, one of the things in the US he decided was that his kids, daughters or sons, would get an education. And that there was never a question about it. But understanding that sort of struggle that he had also made me appreciate all of the things that I had. I was a spoiled kid in the sense that I had everything. So that, I think, gave me a deep understanding of me being very lucky in this life, right? Being born in the US and having all the access I want to educational opportunities, and then coming to Vietnam and deciding how I wanted to conduct myself.
Yeah. So your parents gave you a lot of perspective early on already.
Totally early on.
Yeah.
Also, my father wanted to make sure that I was always independent, that I was always self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also why I have my very strong drive.
Yeah.
I may not always know what I want to do or where I want to go, but I will always take care of myself.
Yeah.
And then I have also been lucky to have worked with really strong mentors and like champions. So in all of my nonprofit work, I always want to work for people that I really admire or respect. And that hasn't always happened, but it is something that's very important to me. And at Succes, that first job I had in Vietnam, I had a boss and a mentor who I admired so much. And I still think of Nan when I try to mirror my leadership skills. I try to think of the ways that she helped empower me as an employee. I very much take that into what I want to do.
Do you have any mentors right now that help you shape the business and personally?
I have clients, so they're kind of mentors to me, right? They're these people who've sort of taken a chance on us, and the way they work with me and the way they talk about me and support me in Vietnam is something that I want to also make sure I do for others. Yeah. So yes, and surprisingly, we do a lot of work in gender equality, helping businesses improve gender equality.
So when did you know what you wanted to do?
So because my parents are refugees, I was always sensitive to other stories of injustice or inequality or war or struggle. And for some reason, I felt very righteous about those things. Those things bothered me that even, it still continues some of these very painful lessons. And so even in middle school, in high school, I was always drawn to stories of people coming out of difficulty. So for example, one of my favorite writers is Maya Angelou. She is an African American who has dealt with a lot of things, but wrote a memoir about her life, and then became one of the best writers in America. In middle school, I remember reading about, at the time, HIV/AIDS and the stigma people had against people who were families of people with HIV. And that felt so wrong to me, right? And then in high school, I was doing things like organizing petitions against sweatshops. I would go shop at the Gap, but then I would protest at the Gap because these things felt very strong. But when it was the time to pick a career, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I didn't know that I could make a career focused on social justice or positive change. And so I studied French. And what I knew was that I wanted to do something international. I wanted to get out of Chicago. I wanted to be in a place that celebrated diversity and big things happening and systems change, right?
Yeah.
But it took me a while to figure out what exactly that looked like and what I wanted to do. And so the first step was working in nonprofits. I loved working in nonprofits. I worked in nonprofits in Washington, D.C., one that focused on Chinese labor rights, and the second one on Free Tibet. And so that sort of opened my eyes to how policy works, how change happens from outside and inside. And then I started to explore whether I wanted to live in China, whether I wanted to live in Asia, what I could do as an American with Vietnamese background in other places. And so what I decided I wanted to do was working in NGOs, and that's why I came to it.
Okay.
And so that's how I ended up here. And now I work in business also because I just wanted to take some of those same skills and apply them to business.
Business is very exciting.
Can be.
Can be. Do you compare yourself with others?
Yes. I have a very annoying competitive streak. So I like to be the best at things, but I'm also always looking over my shoulder. But I've learned to pull back. So more like now I look for people I respect, admire, and I try to figure out what about those people I can also mirror or integrate into my own practice. Originally, actually, my business partner Mimi, she knows this kind of, but I was always very competitive with her in the market. So she was an NGO fundraiser, and I was a fundraiser, and so I was always checking myself against her, right? But when she wanted to go into business with me, I remember thinking at first, like, I don't want to go into business with you. You have always been my competition. She has never thought of me that way, but I thought of her as that. But actually, she was right. She was saying if we do things together and we have common purpose and common goals, we will actually be unstoppable. And she used the term unstoppable, and that put it in my mind like, ooh, two of us would be unstoppable. And then again, my competitive streak is like, yes, let's do that. We should do that.
I have the same with my business partner, Kevin. It was one, and one became more than two. No, it became more than two, because you both have qualities, and you just help each other way further, And that's also, you hire people that even it's not just an extra one or so. No, it should grow exponentially, and I think, like she said, you can become unstoppable.
No, and she's absolutely right. And what I didn't recognize is that her skills and my skills really go together very well. So I thought it would be competitive all the time. No, actually, I've learned so much more about what she's really good at, and some of the things that I'm strong at that she's not, and the way that interacts in our business is really powerful.
Yeah. Right now, you use comparing yourself more as a fuel to improve, or does it hold you back still, or how is that story throughout your career or life?
I think, if we go back to that discussion about failure, that's when I realized that I'm not in competition with anyone anymore. So I think when you're young, you're sort of in competition because you don't have anyone to sort of measure yourself against, right? You don't know if you're going the right way. But as you get older, you realize that everybody's on such different paths, right? That you're not actually competing. There's no... So, of course, so now when I think about competition, it's more about what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? So I'm competing against myself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And improving as I go.
Because you realize you're comparing, or you used to compare yourself with people who don't even have the same goal.
Yeah.
Right? So
and they're not moved by the same things. And
you're comparing apples with oranges. Yeah. Like, why are you trying to be better than that person or do better than that person, but they're doing totally different things? And I think once you make that switch, and you switch towards like, okay, I like what he's doing, I want to integrate in doing like these things I want to do as well. So you start learning, and you, like you said, clients can become mentors, competition can become...
I have a friend, Dana, who is also in the nonprofit sector. And Dana wrote me a really nice card before that, saying that she really enjoys that our relationship we're like on a peer basis now. And I felt so fortunate and so grateful that actually she said that out loud, right? That I am working in a community of peers. And we're all doing very similar things, moving towards very similar causes. But that together, that work is more powerful, right? Because we're able to sort of talk to each other and converse and be open about things we need to change and things we need to move.
Yeah.
And so, yes, now I'm not working. So I'm looking for collaboration, I'm looking for partnership, I'm looking for insight, I'm looking for feedback, and to have that sort of community of people to support you.
Yeah, especially because you have that wholesome goal of like making this country better, making the world better. Why fight each other, put energy into each other, waste time, money, and people's like things, everything, and just work together, even if it's not like you're in the same company or not. So we talked all about this, about your story, about how you go around things. Do you have tips or tricks for the people to tap into their best self, for like young people like myself, or people who are struggling to find their goals or full potential, what would you tell them to focus on?
Let's see, let me think about. Okay, I think I'm thinking of two things. One is find your motivation, right? What are the things that move you? What are the kinds of work, the kinds of teams, the kinds of people you like to work with? What are the positive things where you really feel like you're thriving, right? And start to piece that together as where you want to go in life. And then set the goals, right? So understand yourself. And the second thing is don't beat yourself up. I think it's so easy for us, especially when we're younger, to compare ourselves against other people and then also beat yourself up about those things. I kind of see it like as the shark, right? You have to keep moving. That things will not always go in your life the way you think they should go, but there's probably a reason for that. Right? And there's probably opportunity in that. And I think one thing that I've been very lucky as is that every time I've sort of hit a wall, I realize that wall is actually an opportunity and then figured out a way to either go around it or
it's a challenge, right? Rather than a block. Yeah.
And so those are the two things. Figure out what moves you and what kind of person you want to be, and then that will help you set the goals to the next step, right?
Yeah. So
and then don't be
I think, and this is like a constant between all the speakers, like how can people identify a lot of these things? Like you mentioned, like a block is more an opportunity than it's something that wants to stop you. But how do you identify if it's actually an opportunity if you don't have the experience that?
That's a good one.
And it's from, because get to know yourself. But how do you get to know yourself? How do you identify that you did something right, or that like it is significant good for you? Or
I was just thinking about myself as a young person. And I almost imagined it almost like a ping pong ball, right? Like I kept bouncing up against these walls and trying to figure out what I like and what I don't like. Even in my life, I tried nonprofit work, I tried corporate work in a big corporate, and there were moments where I kept hitting the same wall and other people had to remind me, like, is it worth it? What you're doing now, constantly fighting against yourself, is it worth it? And I had to check myself and think about, am I getting to the same problem because it's my problem, or is this something I can go around, right? And so what I would say is that you have to keep trying new things. You have to keep learning. And only through that journey do you figure out what you want to do or how you're going to do it.
Back to failure then.
And you have to not be scared. I think that part is hard. But I don't know, I grew up as an American, we probably are too brave.
I don't know. Fortune favors the brave. Somehow that yesterday came up in my mind, and because I have similar conversations with my fiance, because we're both running our own businesses. We both want to succeed and get somewhere, right? We're both figuring out the goals we have together and we have personally. And what I've been thinking is like what we've been doing, moving to Vietnam with nothing, like just a hunch and things like that. It's like we've been very brave and very like courageous to do that, but it paid off.
Yeah.
And that's like a quote that came up with me yesterday, like fortune favors the brave. Like we take risks, like such big risks sometimes that people are like, what are you doing?
Has he lost his mind?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that of what we do, and then they're like, and it's always like, first people gonna hate on you or question you, and then people are like gonna behind your back and try to break you down, and then later they're gonna like come begging and like, oh, work with me, or like, and it is like that. You just have to keep pushing and hit that like head against the wall and keep hitting a little bit. Like, is this gonna move or not? Is this the right wall to hit? Okay, it failed. Let's move on to the next wall.
I have in my life moved to places where I shouldn't have or didn't like, and it took me a while to figure that out. So at one point I moved to Florida. I moved to a very small town in Florida, and that was a little too small for me. Again, it has nothing to do with it's not an international community, right? But what I learned about myself at that moment too is that I can always build a community around myself. After 2 years, I did find a job I liked. I could do something with it. but then I chose not to pursue it because I still was never going to be perfectly happy in that place. Right? But the only way to find that out was to try.
Yeah, because I think I've been through similar experiences with literally moving to places, but also doing certain things, such as studying in university. You would always have regret not doing it. So even if you had to go through that failure of like, is this gonna be for me? But like, you're gonna have like a biting feeling going through life. Like, what if?
As a young person, I remember thinking to myself, I never want to be that old person with regrets. Right? Yeah. I also grew up with parents who have very traumatic memories of the war, so they talk about those things over and over and over again for good reason, justified reason. But I never wanted to be someone who had so much regret inside. And so I think that is also part of my not having fear of failure. If I tried it and I gave it my best, then that's it.
Because in the end, it's not a failure.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And regret is more painful than actually not have, like, regret of not doing something is then regretting something you did that you didn't.
I also feel like regret is about accountability, right? Having, like, for example, I feel bad if I can think about certain moments where I was not nice to a certain person, people. But I'm accountable for that. I know that I did that, and later on I tried to apologize, tried to do whatever. And so it's not a regret for me, because I have tried to be accountable to that mistake. Right? And so it's just, again, moving on, learning, going on to the next thing. I think the thing about regret is you sit in it. And I can't be that person.
Yeah, that's what holds me back most, regret. And it comes back to FOMO as well, fear of missing out.
No FOMO.
Yeah, but for me it was when I was traveling, I had FOMO that I didn't do everything, and then I did so much that I would almost burn my. Like, holidays for me, it's not a holiday. It's like, how much can I do in least amount of time, and then I come back from my holiday and I'm dead.
I get in so much trouble with my boyfriend too, because I plan so many things that I don't want. It is true, I have a little FOMO. I don't want to miss anything at that moment. If I only have 5 days in that place, but But
then I'm only satisfied, like, let's say you go 4 days, we do so much in the first 3 days, then I can enjoy. Then I can enjoy sitting at a pool with a cocktail. After I can't do the first day.
That's the key.
Yeah.
I need to learn that.
And my fiance had to learn that the hard way. She's like, I'm fine sitting at the pool, I'll sip a cocktail. And then now it's like I put her on the back of the bike. We like Fukuoka, we just do the whole island.
No, I need to do that too. And then I have a checklist of the places I want to go, and then after I've done that, then I'm done.
And then the most efficient way is like, okay, this. Can I pick something up here and then? But yeah, we're getting at the end. Thank you so much. Do you have a favorite quote that you go by?
Oh yes, I do. It's actually on my Facebook. Hold on. I have many favorite quotes.
And that's actually the last question. Like, where can people follow you?
I have LinkedIn. I have Twitter. Twitter is Vantuli, Vantuli. I don't use Twitter that often.
So, like, your day to day, what can people follow you best?
LinkedIn, maybe. Yeah. Facebook. Okay, here is the quote. I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. And that is by Maya Angelou.
Sorry, say that again?
I did then what I knew how to do.
Yeah.
Now that I know better, I do better.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of constant progress, right?
Yeah, so you've been through the steps.
Again, not beating yourself up for what you didn't know in the past.
Yeah.
And then just keep moving.
No regret.
No regrets.
And went through the failures. Nice.
Failures, opportunity.
Opportunities, yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
That's a pretty good 8th episode, I would say.
Lucky 8.
Lucky 8, for sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And till next.
Yes.